Paul Collier, The Plundered Planet, Why We Must and How We Can Manage Nature for Global Prosperity. What is crucial to the welfare of Earth's bottom billion? In The Plundered Planet, Why We Must and How We Can Manage Nature for Global Prosperity, Paul Collier outlines how a nation's natural assets can be the key to alleviating poverty and ensuring prosperity, while recognizing the delicate balance between utilization and preservation. Tackling the cultural divide between romantics seeking to save the planet and ostriches looking to benefit from it, Collier implores us to find a pragmatic approach that addresses the needs of vulnerable populations, while respecting the finite nature of Earth's resources.
Natural assets, saving the bottom billion. The world's poorest nations, home to the bottom billion, possess valuable natural assets that can change their fortunes. Handled correctly, these resources can provide wealth for the nation. However, when nations fail to manage these natural assets effectively, plunder results. A sound approach to natural asset management must address the needs of the bottom billion while also considering the importance of profitability. Attempting to either save the world or exploit it for profit is not a workable solution. A pragmatic approach is necessary to benefit humanity and the planet. Africa's food insecurity and resource extraction. Most African nations lack the capacity for food production, and global warming only exacerbates the food insecurity situation. Corruption and resource extraction also plagues the continent, with revenue from industry not reaching the citizens. In turn, corrupt leaders fail to regulate the depletion of natural resources, and foreigners with expertise in extraction often exploit the situation. This scenario has long persisted, either via colonial powers or post-colonial corporations. Eradicating global poverty and restoring environmental order have now become the most defining challenges of our era. Despite this urgency, developed nations attempt to make less developed nations enforce environmental rules that they themselves never followed. This disconnect exacerbates distrust between rich and poor countries. Environmentalists and economists must coalesce their effort towards a common goal. Environmentalists need to recognize economic pragmatism, whereas economists need to learn ethics. Ownership of natural assets. When it comes to natural assets like diamonds, oil, copper, and forests, their control matters a great deal to the country where they are located. The exploitation of these resources has been dominated by plunder in the poorest societies throughout history. The buffalo in the western United States, for example, were almost extinct by the end of the 19th century due to overhunting. Similarly, while the Dominican Republic has rich forests, nearby Haiti has denuded hillsides. The U.S. operates on a finders-keepers policy, which leads to an inefficient market where larger companies buy as much land as possible and swallow up smaller competitors. This cycle of exploitation highlights the need for humanity to use natural resources responsibly, with future generations in mind. Dealing with natural resources curse. Natural resources can be a curse rather than a blessing to some of the world's poorer nations. Often, the government controls the sale of natural resources to outsiders, leading to corruption, violence, and inequalities. Countries with a weak or potentially corrupt government tend to suffer more from this resource curse. Some issues result from poor planning, such as Zambian government's long-term loss due to the copper market that plummeted. In contrast, Norway and Malaysia managed their respective economic futures astutely with oil income. Honest governments transparently function with resource-related revenues, allowing citizens to participate in their country's natural assets. Failure to harness natural capital creates the single most crucial obstacle for economic development and growth. The resource curse. After 2 centuries of resource extraction to industrialization, the developed world has disproportionately mapped out the resources, leaving the bottom billion nations with corruptible governments to extract their resources. The author connects the resource curse to the management of revenues and governance. The issue of how to capture the value for the benefit of the citizens arises, and this is where corruption happens. Cameroon, for example, derived enormous revenues from the sale of oil rights, but almost all the money went into the president's private accounts. The fear of asset nationalization justifies firms using bribes to host governments. The value of natural resources. Natural resources offer great potential for financial gain, but their depletion must be carefully managed to ensure long-term sustainability. The choice between immediate consumption and future investment is a critical one, and nations must consider their long-term interests carefully. With many underdeveloped nations facing political instability, the value of natural resources may be unpredictable. The use of funds generated by resource sales is also a crucial factor, with proper investment offering the greatest potential for future gain. Depleting a natural asset is not necessarily bad, but it is unsustainable if the income is lost to corruption. Instead, governments must invest in creating a functional future by developing infrastructure, education systems, and other key areas. The key message is that natural assets have no natural owners, and the responsible management of these resources is essential for future prosperity. Value and vulnerability of natural assets. Natural assets such as plants, trees, fish, and animals offer a double blessing as they are not manufactured, yet can be harvested for eternity. However, these assets are vulnerable to plunder, as demonstrated by Haiti's lack of trees due to past generations' deforestation. With the increasing world population and demand, even naturally occurring renewable resources value rises. Regulations and ownership are necessary to prevent plunder and extinction of these resources. International monitoring and the United Nations control and research of the worldwide fish market can ensure sustainable fishing practices and fair distribution. Harnessing natural assets for sustained development requires a chain of decisions with the weakest link determining the outcome. Cattle, carbon, and future debts. Carbon expelled by cattle poses a greater threat to global warming than nuclear reactors. This creates a natural liability that future generations will have to pay for. France provides an example of carbon efficiency by switching to nuclear energy. People need to understand that their carbon footprint creates a debt to future generations, and carbon regulation seeks to hold current producers accountable for the harm it causes today. Carbon lingers in the atmosphere for human lifetimes and represents a form of plunder.
In order to foster global prosperity and protect our environment for future generations, the insightful message in The Plundered Planet urges us to adopt a pragmatic strategy with a focus on balancing the growing demands on Earth's limited resources. As Collier illustrates, sustainable and responsible management of natural assets is critical in lifting the bottom billion out of poverty and ensuring long-lasting success for generations to come. Only through cooperation, transparency, and forward-thinking policies can we begin to tackle the dual challenges of poverty and environmental degradation and set humanity and our planet onto a truly sustainable trajectory.